In the year 1429, the Kingdom of France was a house divided against itself. For nearly 100 years, the conflict we now call the 100 Years' War had bled the land white. The English occupied Paris and the north. The Duke of Burgundy had allied with the English against his own kin, and the rightful heir, the Dauphin, Charles VII, was a king without a crown, hiding in the Loire Valley, his legitimacy questioned even by his own mother. To the common people, it felt like the end. Famine was widespread, and the civil war between the Armagnacs and Burgundians was often more brutal than the war against the English. France didn't just need a general, it needed a miracle. But miracles don't usually arrive in the form of an illiterate 17-year-old peasant girl from the edges of the borderlands. Today, we tell the story of Joan d'Arc, a visionary, a warrior, and a martyr. How did she convince a king to give her an army? And how did she change history in just 1 year? Joan was born around 1412 in Domrémy. Her father, Jacques, was a tenant farmer and local official, not a poor peasant in the modern sense, but a man of some standing in his small village. When she was 13, in her father's garden, the world shifted. Joan testified that a great light appeared, and she heard the voice of Saint Michael the Archangel. He was eventually joined by Saint Catherine of Alexandria and Saint Margaret of Antioch. For years, they gave her personal guidance. But as the English tightened their grip on the city of Orléans, the message changed. They told her, you must go into France. You must raise the Siege of Orléans. You must lead the Dauphin to Reims to be crowned. In May 1428, she approached Robert de Baudricourt, the garrison commander at Vaucouleurs. He laughed her off, telling her cousin to take her home and give her a good beating. But Joan returned in early 1429. This time, she accurately predicted a French defeat, the Battle of the Herrings, before the official news reached the town. Convinced, Baudricourt gave her a sword, an escort of 6 men, and the men's clothing she would wear for the rest of her life. To reach the king, Joan traveled 300 miles through enemy territory. When she arrived at the castle of Chinon, Charles VII famously tested her by hiding among his courtiers. Joan, despite never having seen him, walked straight to him. What happened next is the secret of Chinon. Joan took Charles aside and, according to later accounts, revealed a secret only known to him and God. It's believed she repeated a silent prayer Charles had made in his oratory, asking God that if he were truly the rightful heir, he might be saved. Charles was convinced, but his advisors weren't. They sent her to Poitiers for a 3-week examination by the church's best minds. They found no heresy, only humility and virginity. When asked for a sign of her power, she replied, I did not come to Poitiers to show signs. Take me to Orléans, and I will show you the sign for which I am sent. Joan arrived at Orléans in April 1429. She was a whirlwind of reform. She banned swearing, required confession, and famously chased off the camp followers and prostitutes, even striking one with the flat of her sword. On May 7th, during the assault on the Les Tourelles fortress, a crossbow bolt pierced her shoulder, passing through her body. Most soldiers would have been finished. Joan pulled the bolt out herself, prayed, and returned to the front. The English, seeing the woman they thought they'd killed reappear on the ramparts, panicked. The siege was broken the next day. She followed this with the Battle of Patay, where the French cavalry finally crushed the English longbowmen. On July 17, 1429, Charles was crowned in Reims. Joan stood at his side, her mission technically complete, but the war wasn't over. Joan wanted to take Paris. Charles wanted to negotiate. In May 1430, while defending the town of Compiègne, Joan was ambushed. As her troops retreated into the city, the drawbridge was raised to prevent the enemy from entering, leaving Joan and her rearguard trapped outside. She was pulled from her horse by a Burgundian archer and taken prisoner. Charles VII, the man who owed her his crown, never offered a single cent in ransom. The Burgundians eventually sold her to the English for 10,000 livres. She was taken to Rouen for a trial overseen by Bishop Pierre Cochon. The goal was simple: prove she was a witch or a heretic to delegitimize the king she had crowned. For 5 months, she was kept in a secular prison and guarded by 5 English soldiers. During her trial, she was asked if she was in the grace of God. Her answer remains one of the most brilliant in legal history. If I am not, may God put me there, and if I am, may God so keep me. The court eventually condemned her on 12 counts, primarily her voices and her insistence on wearing men's clothing. On May 30, 140-31, Joan was led to the old market square in Rouen. She was 19. She died of smoke inhalation while crying the name Jesus. But the English were terrified of her legacy. After she died, the executioner was ordered to move the fire so the crowd could see her charred body, then burn the remains 2 more times until only ash and bone were left. They threw these ashes into the river Seine to prevent anyone from claiming her as a relic. They wanted to erase her. Instead, they immortalized her. Within 22 years of her death, the English were driven out of France. In 1456, a new trial was opened by the Pope. They interviewed 115 witnesses, from her childhood friends to the soldiers she led. They declared her a martyr and her original trial full of corruption. Joan of Arc was canonized a saint in 1920. She remains a symbol that cannot be claimed by any one political side. She was a peasant who spoke to kings, a woman who led armies, and a girl who refused to lie about her truth, even when the fire was at her feet.